Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us today. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Today's webinar is brought to you by EdWeb and Ballard and Tie. Ballard and Tie is the creator of engaging and effective materials for assessing and instructing English learners. Our core and supplemental programs for K-12 provide a systematic and explicit approach to language learning, and our pre-K to 12 assessments support instructional decision making. We're going to be showing some examples from a few Ballard and Tie programs throughout the webinar, and you'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Ballard and Tie and enjoy some free samples as we get into the webinar. So I am pleased to welcome Brenda Adeva and Pamela Abbey, who are going to be your presenters today. Both Pamela and Brenda are educational consultants with Ballard and Tie, and Brenda's going to be your instructor today, and Pamela is actually going to be a student. So you're going to see some of these strategies modeled live and in action. So welcome, ladies. Just give a brief introduction to both of you. Before joining Ballard and Tie, Brenda spent 15 years as a classroom teacher, mentoring teachers and developing curriculum specifically in the field of ESL and language development. She specialized in teaching multi-level classrooms, blended learning, and creating interactive learning opportunities. Brenda is fluent in 5 languages, and she has a bachelor's degree in Chinese, a master's in English TESOL, and is currently working on obtaining her Master of Business Administration in Nonprofit Management and Marketing Management. So she is a busy lady. And Pamela joins Brenda, also an educational consultant at Ballard and Tie. And Pamela has been teaching English learners for over 12 years, primarily with newcomers from Puerto Rico. She has a master's in TESOL and teaching from the University of Cincinnati. So we are excited to learn from both of you today. So Brenda, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We are actually going to have some fun with different activities using Chinese to see if Pamela can learn some Chinese, and she'll use some of her Spanish to demonstrate what an English learner with a Spanish background might, kind of do in an activity. But also, students have lots of different languages, so obviously we're going to hope to give you some tools, tips, tricks to use with your students that have different language backgrounds. We are definitely going to talk about how to use images to teach and practice vocabulary. We are going to use sentence frames to demonstrate how grammar as well as language function with the vocabulary word can be practiced. We are going to always talk about how to speak to write. Listening and speaking super important, but we definitely want you to take that speaking and listening part to the writing and then maybe reading your own writings. And then again, how we can use language to support English language instruction. All right. Our teaching philosophy, very quickly, is a very structured and systematic language development approach. So we always cover 3 things. The first one is targeted vocabulary. So I'm going to give you some examples of that target vocabulary practice and use Pamela to kind of show you what that might look like. We are then going to go with grammar forms, things like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and all your verb tenses. You're going to then have language functions. That's what students do with language. So at the very newcomer level, things like asking and answering questions, naming things, responding to and issuing commands. You're then going to have things all the way like describe to compare and contrast. We do social as well as academic language in a very balanced approach of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So whether you're doing a listening activity, please try to connect that somehow to speaking, then maybe writing, and then maybe reading your own writing. All right. We are going to start talking about this first activity. But before we do the activity, vocabulary is a very important part of language learning. I'm sure you all know that. And we always stress as teachers, they need more words. They need names for things. They need to be able to use these vocabulary words in a context. But as a newcomer, so we're going to start with the newcomer level. Newcomer level 1 students, a list of vocabulary words might be a little bit overwhelming. So if you see in this picture where it says target vocabulary nouns, you could see, maybe 10 words, and that might be a lot for the newcomer. So maybe you just pick 4 words to start. For example, I've chosen teacher, father, mother, and family. Now, with newcomers, you definitely want to use images to teach vocabulary. However, you can use images with higher level students as well. And I'm going to demonstrate that throughout the course of this presentation. But again, pictures, images, you can find them on the internet. You can find them in a magazine, make slides, that kind of thing, or use flashcards. This is what we have here. So in theory, the first one is a flashcard of teacher, father, mother, and family. So let's go to the next slide where we're going to talk about how we can teach these vocabulary words. So even with the newcomer, you definitely want images, but you should also show the words. So teacher, picture, word, teacher, father, picture, and then the word father. All right. Pamela is going to be my student, but she's going to pretend she did not see this slide where it shows her in English what the vocabulary words mean, okay? I'm going to demonstrate one of my favorite activities. It is called disappearing vocabulary. I'm going to first do it and then explain it afterwards, okay? Pamela, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So if Pamela were learning Chinese, meaning she is a newcomer, level 1 to the Chinese language, this is what it might feel like. Audience, I really do encourage you. Nobody can hear you, so please say it out loud. Follow Pamela, do what Pamela does so you can get the feel of what this might, like the experience might be for your students. All right, we're going to start from left to right. The first vocab word, Pamela, could you please say 老师? Say 老师.
老师.
Excellent. Next one, 爸爸.
爸爸.
Next one, 妈妈.
妈妈.
And the last one, 家庭.
家庭.
Very good. All right. We're going to now go through the words, and then we're going to increase the speed every time we go. First, we'll start out slow. Ready? We're going to say it together. Ready, go. 老师, 爸爸,
爸爸,
妈妈,
妈妈,
家庭.
家庭.
Again, 老师,
老师,
爸爸,
爸爸,
妈妈,
妈妈,
家
家
庭.
庭.
Okay, now we're going to keep going. And when you actually do this with a real audience, I would cover some of the words or take them out. Some of the images or take them out. And you'll keep saying those blanks, okay? So let's just practice saying it over and over a little bit faster. Ready, go. 老师, 爸爸, 妈妈, 家庭, 老师, 爸爸, 妈妈, 家庭. All right. So let's try this. Pamela, what do you think 老师 means? It's the first one.
Lady?
Lady? Okay, that's a good guess. There's a student next to the teacher. So there's a student, a 学生. What could the lady be? Maybe.
Teacher.
Teacher. Good. So 老师, teacher. All right. Do you remember what the next word is in Chinese?
爸爸.
Baba. What does Baba look like or maybe sound like? Or
Dad.
maybe good, like Papa, right? Or good, Dad. Excellent. So Baba. The next one was?
Mama.
Yeah, starts with the masa. Yep, good. Mama. What do you think Mama is?
A mama.
Good, a mama. Excellent. That one was easy. All right. And then the last one, 家庭. They're at a picnic, so it has to do with the people. 家庭. Can you guess?
Family.
Family. Excellent. All right. So thank you, Pamela, for cooperating and doing the participating in this activity. Those of you participants, I hope you tried it too. So you would have just learned 4 words, right? Teacher, father, mother, and family. So in disappearing vocabulary, you are actually practicing pronunciation before you teach the vocabulary. Then, of course, you want the students to guess what the vocabulary words are. You don't want to tell them what the answers are. And then I asked for Pamela's first language, which was English, right? So in theory, if you were teaching English to Spanish speakers or English to Chinese speakers, you would do the opposite in the language. But you want the students to, even at the newcomer level, be able to give you answers to guess. All right. Okay. Well, Pamela, I'm going to ask you to come back on to use that same vocabulary word, this time with a different picture. Now, when we're teaching vocabulary, we always want to have the vocabulary come from some kind of context, or the vocabulary, put it in a new context, right? So this picture now is a picture of a family picnic. Do we remember what family is again in Chinese?
家庭.
家庭, excellent. So this is a 家庭, right? Can you see a mama?
Yes, I see.
All right.
Mama.
Even though I can't see you point, can you point to the mama? Thank you.
Down.
And the baba.
Baba.
Excellent. And there's probably no 老师, right? What does 老师 mean again?
Teacher.
Teacher, right? Unless the woman, the mama, is a 老师, right? All right. So I'm interacting with my student, Pamela, or students, right? Talking about the vocabulary in this new context using some of the vocabulary we just learned. And I'm still using some English. I know when we're bilingual teachers, we like to use a lot of maybe Spanish with our students. That's okay at the beginning, but we don't want to translate everything we're saying. We want the student to use some of their language in the, new language. So for her, Chinese. All right. Thank you, Pamela. Also with vocabulary, you can take vocabulary out of a reading. I do encourage you actually to do that, to pre-teach vocabulary that comes from a reading, teach it, and then it goes back into the reading. Now, at the newcomer beginner level, you might not have that large of a reading, but remember, a reading can be word level as well as sentence level, then paragraph, etc. Okay. All right. So just some tips for newcomers level 1s about vocabulary. Again, thematic vocabulary is very helpful. Our topic was family, 家庭. You're going to have vocabulary from readings that you might take it out from there or then teach it through the reading. You're going to teach vocabulary through images. You saw how we use the images, but only a few at a time. I didn't want to teach Pamela 10 words because then the 家庭 will be the mama and the baba and the 老师, and they'll get all confused because there'll be so many more vocabulary words. Now, how did I choose those words? I would choose the words that are most common for that age group. So if I was doing something like school words, would I teach slide and playground to my middle school, high school students? Probably not. I would definitely choose it for the kindergarten, first grade group. Also, I asked for the vocabulary in their language, right? So with Pamela, 家庭, can you guess what that is? And she told me family. Now, whether it's incorrect or correct. So what I mean by this is, let's pretend Pamela spoke a language I didn't speak, like she spoke Japanese, and she said the word, and I'm like, well, I'm not really sure if that's the correct word. That's okay. In the future, she will self-correct. She'll figure out how to replace those words over time. But if just them practicing it, saying out loud helps so much in practicing that vocabulary. All right. Activities for vocabulary practice. There are tons. I could do a whole webinar on just those, but for this purpose, match the words with the pictures, right? So definitely students, show them the picture and then the word. Maybe they can match it. Maybe they can't, and you have a multi-level class and you have the higher levels help the lower levels with matching. Disappearing vocabulary. I promise you, I did this activity with science words, with history words, with high-level vocabulary with my higher levels, and they enjoyed this. They knew it was coming, and then they were able to pronounce the words when they saw it in then context. It was easy for them to read. And then definitely have a context with vocabulary, whether it's a picture or a reading. All right. We are going to do our next activity with Pamela. So before we do that, let me explain. We're going to try it first in Chinese and then later with me teaching English to a Spanish speaker, which will be Pamela. But in this activity, we are working with sentence frames. Now, you're going to hear a lot about sentence frames, see a lot of sentence frames throughout this presentation. And we like to start with a question though. So question and then answer. So we are going to use that same theme picture with the family picnic. Remember 家庭 Pamela? And then we are going to use the pictures of the vocabulary, but this time they're in a different order. All right. So ready? Who is this? Is 这是谁? 这是谁? You don't need to say it. Just listen. 这是谁? Who is this? All right. This is the. So 这是. And then you would say something like 家庭, mama, etc. Okay. So Pamela, pretend I'm pointing to the family, right? Okay. In the picture. 这是谁? 这是
这是家庭.
家庭. Excellent. So Pamela just made a complete sentence. 这是家庭. Let's try the next one. I'm now pointing to the father in the picture. Father. 这是谁? 这是
爸爸.
Baba. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. So we're going to quickly switch now. You are now a Spanish speaker. We're going to try this in English. Who is this? Who is this? This is the, I'm pointing to the third picture. So that is mother, the teacher. Teacher, mother.
The teacher.
Good. This is the teacher. What is teacher in Spanish?
Maestra.
Maestra. Excellent. All right. And we're going to try the last one. Easy, right? Because it sounds similar in Spanish. So mama, right? We're going to point to the lady, the mom. All right. Yep. So who is this? This is the
mama.
This is the mama or the mother.
Mother.
Because we're doing English now or yeah. Okay. No worries. All right. So that's the mother. Excellent. Thank you so much for your help. All right. So in this activity, we use the question. We then use the sentence frame to answer the question. We had the vocabulary that we could actually put into the sentence frame, whether it was a picture or a word. And we're using the theme picture to ask about the people in that picture. All right. So it's great. You can use different languages. I probably could have done this in many different languages with many different language speakers, and that would be very fun. So just some tips. We were focusing on the grammar form of nouns. Nouns are very important to teach. You need to teach them to name things, right? We can name people just like you saw as well. We use sentence frames in context with images. Definitely move the pictures around in the sentence frame. Have the students move the pictures into those sentence frames. And always try as best as you can to have a question and an answer, because in reality, students are going to hear a question and then respond with an answer. All right. The part I didn't demonstrate is I do, we do, you do, just for the interest of time. But in general, I did the I do with Pamela. I also kind of did the we do because she was my one student. But in theory, you would ask all the other students. The you do, she would make her own sentences, maybe speak to her partner about it, maybe write it down. Now in Chinese, that would be very difficult because there's Chinese characters. But same, with newcomers in English, it's very difficult for a Chinese student to write in English because they're doing Chinese characters. But Spanish, same letters, so that's good. Use of home language. I hope you saw that demonstrated, and that you don't want to translate everything in their home language, make them do the work. And then you can use the same sentence frame with different vocabulary to review and practice. Maybe last week's vocabulary, maybe last month's vocabulary, and switch it out. All right. Pamela's going to come back and help us with this next activity. We're going to try this in Chinese. Put the, give the, point to, take the, show me. Now, these are very often used in some kind of language assessment. It's also commands that you do here, in everyday life. So we do need to practice them. However, if I were to teach Pamela all 5 of these sentence frames all at the same time, it would sound something like this. 放, 给, 直着, 拿着, 给我看看. Now, even though I gestured and I showed her as I spoke, Pamela, did that feel like you understood what I was saying and can memorize it all? No, it just sounds like sounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's what your newcomer in English will pretty much experience. So it's best to do them one at a time. So let's try to pretend to do this, but we're going to try put the something here or there. Okay. So put is fang. All right. Fang. Can you say fang? Fang. All right. Here is 这里. 这里. And then 那里.
哪里
那里. Okay, audience, I really hope you're repeating as well. It's kind of fun. So, 放家庭这里.
这里
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you to do that. You're going to pretend and just explain in English what you're pretending to do. Okay, ready? So, 放家庭这里.
这里
So what would you do?
Put the father there.
The father, is that 家庭? Father is 爸爸.
家庭 family.
Family. Okay, good. So you would pick up the family card and then do what with it?
Put it
放
wherever you pointed to.
放这里. Yes. Thank you. Yep. So then we would try the other words, obviously, and then she nailed it. We then move on to give the gay. Okay. And then it's to someone. So gay, John, right? So you're going to pick up another card like Baba and gay, John. So what would you do there?
Give John the father.
Excellent. The card. Yep. Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for your help. So that is what that activity would feel like. So grammar form was imperative. The function was responding to and issuing the command. So I was telling her to do something and she was supposed to respond with the movements. Sentence frames, use them in context with the image, just like you just saw. Move the picture cards around. Again, I do, we do, you do. I'm sure you saw all the gestures. I do so many gestures just in daily life now because of my 15 years of teaching EL, right? I hit things and things fall off everywhere. And then you definitely want to teach them one frame at a time. Then the second one, mix that up. Then add the third one, mix the three up, etc. And you can give commands, or Pamela could give commands to John, right? As she practices it gets really good. All right, the physical box. So she said wherever you want me to put it. Now, if she was middle school, high school, which actually I've taught 15 years in middle school, high school, they would have known what I meant by here. They would have just plopped it on my desk messily, right? But a kindergarten, first grade, a little more vague. It is like here and there. It's a little vague. So give them a box so they could put the card physically in the box in front of you or over there. All right. And then you might use these same frames to practice more vocabulary. You could even use objects, right? Like animals, if you're teaching animals, or school supplies, things like that. All right. We are not going to model these next two activities. I just want to remind you that social language is super important. So at the newcomer level, you know they're important. Students hear it all the time. So please, thank you and you're welcome are very important to practice. You can use that same idea of the 家庭, mama, baba, and have them move the cards around to give me, right, gay. And then thank you, you're welcome. Dialogue practice. Now, when I learned Spanish, when I learned Chinese in school, we had to write our own dialogues. We had to create them and then present them in class and perform, etc., right? Here is a dialogue already if you put sentence frames together, but I would not teach them 6 at a time. Definitely the 2 question and answer, then the next 2, and then the next 2, right? Like how many brothers or sisters do you have? I have 2 brothers. So dialogue practice, really great. Those who are higher level, have them start with this and then add on 10 lines. If they are newcomer, have them stick to maybe just the 2 or the 4 or even the 6 lines. All right. Now we come back to this picture again. I do want to show you that listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities can be scaffolded for higher levels. I have only ever taught multi-level classes, 5th through 12th grade, levels 1 through 5, all in the same classroom. That classroom was 7 students all the way to my top at 39 students, 7 periods a day. So fun times. I loved it. It was great. It was in San Francisco. But listening and speaking, you definitely will have higher levels in your class. So in this picture, which some of you might not be able to see or read, that's okay. Listening and speaking for level ones, newcomers, point to the, right? What does it sound like? Like, so father, boy. Is this the mother? Yes or no, right? But early intermediates, you might be talking about, what is happening in this picture, present progressive. So level twos, you want to get to the sentence level. Level threes, a paragraph, like maybe, why is the father smiling? Can you give examples of why you think that is true? And they're writing a paragraph. Then early advanced level 4, and then maybe level 5, they're writing a story or an essay about the perfect picnic. And then definitely they speak to then write, to then read their writings to the class. All right, we are now going to move on to level 2. Now, level 2 is going to be more of that sentence level practice, okay? So newcomers, yes, they repeated the whole sentence, but they're really just repeating after you. They probably only were able to have command over the word level, right? So level 2 is going to be your sentence level. So if you have level 1 students mixed in with your level 2, make sure you teach the vocabulary with the images and words, right? And then level 2 can actually translate the word for the level 1 students. And then definitely you want to ask your level 2 or higher for a sentence with the word. So for example, if doctor was a word, they could say, okay, well, what is doctor in Spanish? Great. And then you have use doctor in a sentence, right? And then can you translate that sentence into Spanish? And then for level 2, the vocabulary might be simple. That's good because you really want to practice the grammatical form and function. If you use difficult vocabulary and then you have a new grammatical form and function, then the student is struggling with new vocabulary, new grammatical form, and a new function. So you really do want to help them a little when the vocabulary is a little bit more simple, but you maybe put more words in that category for them to practice. All right. Definitely use the sentence frames to do that, and which we're going to practice in just a second. For level 3, though, you could have them look up, words. You could have them use those 3 words in the same sentence. So, for example, I might say doctor, firefighter, farmer. Use all those words in one sentence. But the rule is you cannot say the doctor, firefighter, and farmer, blah, blah, blah. You have to separate the words out. So you're not allowed to list. All right. One activity that I'm not going to demonstrate, but was my favorite activity, it takes a tiny bit of preparation before. I would make slides and randomly put words together. So maybe the first round was just 1 word per slide. The second round was 2 words per slide. Then the third round was 3 words per slide. And everything in my class was a competition. If they got 3 words correctly in the same sentence, they would get 3 points. So near the end of the game, they could really catch up in points. Middle school, high school, that's all they ever want to do is play games and compete. So you have to make it fun, right? Stretch a sentence, really great activity. All right. Pamela is going to come back and help us with this next activity. Pamela is now a level 2, but she is learning English and she's a Spanish speaker, okay? So again, with that practice of question and answer, you see the sentence frames, I see a blank, blank, it's going to be I see and then a, okay? I see 2 blank. So Pamela can pick anybody in this picture. Let's assume she already practiced the vocabulary with me, right? So Pamela, who do you see? Who do you see? I see
a dentist.
I see a dentist. Good. Now, imagine there are 2. Now, who do you see? I see 2.
I see 2 dentists.
Dentist. Okay, good. All right. So with 2, you want to add an S. So dentist becomes dentists with an S. Okay, so let's try this again. Now, who do you see? I see 2.
I see 2 dentists.
Good. All right. Do me a favor. I see 2 dentists. Can you say that in Spanish for me?
I see two dentists.
Yo
Yo
veo.
veo dos dentistas.
Good. I wanted you to hear the dentistas. Is there an S in dentistas?
Yes.
In English, you have to add the S as well. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. Then you would practice other activities. All right. So grammar form was regular plurals. Had she said firefighter, firewoman, right? Would that firewoman have helped to just add an S, Pamela?
No.
No, right? So it changes it from regular to irregular. All right. So really quickly, we talked about regular plurals and naming people. Grammar form, teach it like a mathematical equation. So I helped her understand dentistas, added the S in her language. So let's add an S in English. It equates, right? However, not all languages denote for plurals. Chinese is actually one of them. So 我是一个老师. Remember, 老师 is teacher. I said I am a 老师, one. But you could say like I am two. I have two 老师, right? I have two 老师 is what you would think it would be, but it isn't. It's 我有两个老师. So still no plural. I just changed the number form and there's no plural. So with Chinese students, it's really difficult to teach plurals because there's no S in their language like there is in Spanish or Portuguese. I'm guessing a lot of other languages. And maybe some of the languages your students speak don't have plurals as well. And if you don't know, maybe you could ask someone who speaks that language and say, hey, maybe do they have plurals, right? All right. So regular plurals versus irregular, we talked about that. And even for higher levels, you can use pictures. So I use that picture. She's a higher level. I'm not asking her to name someone. I'm trying to have her practice plurals with that picture. And you can then change naming people to naming things and practice more vocabulary with first regular plurals. Then later you have to go back again and teach irregular plurals. All right, Pamela's going to come back and try activity 2 with us. So this is a farmer. And what is the farmer doing? Okay, so Pamela, what is the farmer doing? If you can look at that picture, there's cows, there's maybe milk. What is the farmer doing? So the first blank is the farmer is. What is the farmer doing?
Feeding the cows.
Okay, feeding the cows. The farmer is feeding the cows. The farmer is milking the cows, right? Okay. So I'm not sure if you can do this in Spanish, but the point is in Spanish, present progressive has a form, yes? So like, I only know like la maestra está trabajando, right? So it has the ando ending and with the está verb. Okay, so the present progressive is very difficult in Spanish and in English. So we do need to practice it, and we can practice it through pictures. Thank you, Pamela. All right, so grammar form, present progressive, describing actions. Teach the grammar form, the be verb plus the verb plus ing. So the farmer is feeding the cows. So is the be verb, feed is the verb plus ing for the cows, right? So Spanish and English are very similar. So that one might be easy to stack up the Spanish sentence and the English sentence and show where it aligns. Now, some languages have a time marker 在. So if you have any Chinese students, it's going to say like 在工作, which means work. 在, and then the verb 工作. But there's no change of the verb. There's no anything else. You just put the 在 word to show present progressive, meaning actually right now. So it's a little bit different. So Chinese to English, English to Chinese is a little bit more difficult. Again, we are using the higher level pictures. See, I talk with my hands. And then you can start the sentence and have students further describe the picture. So let's say Pamela says the farmer is feeding cows. Can you tell me more? Can you add adjectives? Can you describe how? So at level 2, some might start at sentence level and they had a difficult time with that and that's it. But you might have those that can then write a little bit more, one more sentence or one more sentence. So you definitely want to practice this speaking and writing fluency and then have them even add more things into it. All right. Again, listening and speaking, reading, writing activities can be done at different levels, right? So maybe you're describing the accident on the street. What is happening? What are all the people of different occupations? What are they doing? Present, progressive, right? So there are a lot of different activities you can do. It'd be great if there are written for you, but if not, you can think in terms of beginners, right? Word level, maybe a phrase. Then level 2 is definitely a sentence level, maybe present progressive. Level 3, definitely paragraph. Then level 4 and 5, definitely some kind of writing at a more lengthy writing. All right. We're going to jump now into level 3s or higher. And you might say, Brenda, why are we still using images, right? Well, images are helpful for brainstorming. I'm not going to ask Pamela to come back on, but this is just airplane, bicycle. We're going to compare and contrast. An airplane is faster than a bicycle. An airplane travels in the air, but a bicycle travels on land. So compare and contrast is something asked of our higher level students all the time. You may even need them to write a compare and contrast paragraph. My daughter's in 4th grade. She had to write compare Skittles with M&Ms, compare and contrast, and write a whole paragraph on that, right? It could be anything, but the teacher made them eat the Skittle, open the M&M, made them do an activity where they're physically looking at something, whether it's an image or the actual candy, right? So compare and contrast is very important. Let's do it with something simpler before we ask them to compare and contrast this book versus that other book, right? So pictures help to give them something to describe because you could see the air, you could see the land. If it were a boat, you could see the water, etc. All right. So comparative structures, compare and contrast, level 3 to 5. Normally, I like to group them together just because levels 3 to 5, they differ, but they might differ in different skills. So one might be a higher level writer, but a low speaker. One might be really good at reading, but not so good at speaking, right? So those 3 levels can usually be combined. Definitely when I ask students to fill out a sentence, I want them to have a brainstorming list first. So faster than, slower than, bigger than, smaller than, right? If you can make a list as a class, then they have some words to write from, especially if you have lower levels mixed in there or the high level 3, 4, 5, but they might be low in vocabulary. So airplane and bicycle, I might not make them only do that one sentence. The airplane is faster than the bicycle. I might say, okay, well, what else? The airplane is louder than the bicycle. The airplane is more colorful than the bicycle. I don't know, whatever you want to say there. But definitely multiple sentences with the same 2 items that you're comparing and contrasting. All right. When we talk about home language, this is another good time to kind of do that mathematical grammar equation or at least talk about word order, right? So menos, más, menos que is kind of that denotation that you would put in for Spanish. So you might want to help them understand that it's like que is then, and then más or menos like larger or fewer than, right? So that kind of thing and how the word order goes. Well, of course, in Chinese, we don't make things that simple. You would actually use this word be, which is a comparative word. So I might say airplane, feiji, be, bicycle, 自行车, da. And then I put the adjective. So the adjective is at the end of the whole sentence. So the word order is very different. So normally I would put it up on the board, circle, draw lines, arrows, etc., to kind of help them understand. And you're going to say to me, Brenda, I teach 5 different languages, students of 5 different languages in my classroom. How do I do that for all my students? Well, I taught Chinese in high school. I taught the same students Chinese and English, which was very interesting, by the way. But I had Korean speakers, Thai speakers, Japanese speakers, Tagalog in that same class. And I might say, okay, well, I explain it and they're higher level, obviously. So they're going to then kind of write out their own mathematical equation for that language. All right. Pictures to compare and contrast. Yes, let's do that. Let's use actual candies like my daughter's teacher did, or physical objects, right? To compare and contrast, to then write a paragraph. That way they're not just thinking from their thoughts. You might then want them to brainstorm a list of what are those things that are different, the same, and make a list to then write a paragraph, right? All right. But with a sentence frame, anytime you have a sentence frame, you might have already your topic sentence. Think of it along the lines of, my sentence frame is the topic sentence. Let's make sure the students write a good sentence. Then let's pick some details, examples, and then help them fill out the rest of the paragraph. Before they do that, though, speak to write. Let's get them speaking about that. All right. Activity 2 and 3, I just wanted to cover here really quickly. Graphic organizers, charts are the best way to do this. In activity 2, they're talking about land, air, sea, water, right? So we're categorizing or describing objects in a place, an area of where they travel. Then you might see something like used for personal, community, business use. So classifying. We need students to classify, categorize, organize in different graphic organizers. So please practice those things. All right. So graphic organizers could be T-charts. I call them T-charts, even though they have a whole bunch of other lines and columns. So T-charts, use them. Venn diagrams, definitely, right? Help them to understand and organize the material before they even write. I taught science, I taught history, I used graphic organizers so often just to pull apart the information for students and then put them in kind of those like containers to then write about it, right? Have them speak to write, have them find specific details. So again, pictures really do help with that brainstorming process. And lastly, we're going to have activity 4, where we're going to talk about future tense. Future tense is important and about action. So where will you, how will you, what will you, I will. If you put all these questions together, you instantly have some kind of paragraph, right? So maybe they're talking about, where will you go this weekend? Well, I'm watching the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Sorry, I had to throw that in. But anyway, you could have them talk about where they're going this weekend or where they're going on a future trip, right? That kind of thing. So future tense, describe actions. Make sure you have that question and answer for a conversation and make it a project. Higher levels, 3, 4, 5. This was my favorite. I loved doing projects. Research. Put your research into paraphrased notes so you don't plagiarize. Then use questions to brainstorm a little bit more. Speak and write. Fluency lines is one of my favorite activities. You line the students up into 2 lines. They then talk to the person across from them, whether the person understands them or not. So you can do this multi-level, but the speaker is practicing to speak. The listener is practicing to write. Then as you rotate each round, you start with maybe 30 seconds, Start talking about your topic 30 seconds, then 1 minute, right? And the time will increase. The students will have more and more to say. You can also use it on the back end of writing. So now they have more time, they're speaking about their writing. And then as they become more fluent, the time span decreases. So fluency lines, I use this all the time to brainstorm some kind of topic I was going to talk about. So in science, we're going to talk about animals, talk about all the animals that are in the water, and they would just talk about it. Fluency lines can be done in their home language first, even if they're a higher level, just to help them brainstorm those ideas. And then, have them write a paragraph at this level or more, right? And then have them make picture boards or slides to speak from images. That way they don't read their paragraph or their writing when they're presenting. All right. So again, listening and speaking, reading and writing, use some kind of picture to talk about, to write about, and give them different level opportunities. Literature frames are very important. So we definitely want students talking about literature. We can have them predict. We could have them talk about who, what, where, when, why. That leads to an academic summary, right? So sentence frames again. First, second, third, finally, what happened in the book, any kind of book, whether it's their ELA reading or their science reading or history reading also. Character study setting, as well as main idea details. Definitely use literature frames to talk about literature, to even then write about literature. We are almost done. So in summary, please use images and sentence frames for speaking, definitely to then write. Vocab, grammar, and functions can all be taught and practiced through sentence frames. And again, use different languages to compare that word order. Targeted grammar practice. All right. We all know what weak areas are, right? For students, you hear them over and over. It makes you want to pull your hair out. That's when you might say, plurals. We need to focus on plurals. Let's do activities for this week that just focus on plurals. Maybe you're preparing for WIDA, ELPA 21, or any of your, assessments that you need students to practice listening and speaking. And grammar, right? Do targeted grammar practice. Literature, definitely do it in conversation as well as in writing. Use of a picture. All right, we talked a lot about pictures, how they could be questions and answers to speak, to then write. So it doesn't matter what level students are, use pictures, images. And then vocab and grammar compared to the home language to practice a function in their language. Even if you don't understand them, they're practicing it out loud. And then in the future, it helps them make that connection. All right. Well, that is all the time I have. And it was very nice and fun having this conversation with you all. I am going to now turn it back over to Emily.
Thank you, Brenda. This was super fun. And thank you, Pamela, for your wonderful student practice. That was great. It was really fun to see all of these strategies and tactics modeled. So thank you for that. Before, I'm going to let Brenda and Pamela take just a quick little break and let you know that you can actually get samples of what Brenda showed today from Ballard and Ty's English language development programs, along with many other samples that she didn't show. But if you go to the URL that we're dropping into chat, and that's here on your screen, you can download samples again from Frames for Fluency, Carousel, Champions, and see the kind of breadth of Ballard and Ty's English language development programs. We'll also be sharing Brenda's contact information, Brenda and Pamela's contact information with you. Both are wonderful resources, as you've seen today, and are happy to brainstorm ideas with you on how to best support your English learners. So I encourage you to explore Ballard and Ty's lesson plans and other activities, and reach out to Brenda and Pamela. We also want to, I guess, go ahead and get to some questions. We do have some great questions that have come in. So we'll just dive into those and see how many we can get to. Just starting at the top, if you could just give a brief overview of what exactly levels 1, 2, and 3 are in terms of the student levels. Yeah.
Okay, yes. So student levels, generally, I like to use numbers just because different states are different. So WIDA levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some say level 1 is beginning, early intermediate is 2, intermediate is 3, early advanced is 4, and then advanced is 5. But I know in Arizona, it's different. California, level 1 and 2 is emerging, then level 3, then 4 or 5 would be bridging, expanding. So numbers are just a little bit easier to communicate with. But if you have, no reference to any of the testing type language platform assessments, think level 1 word, level 2 sentence level 3 more that paragraph level in speaking and writing. Pamela, do you have anything to add?
No, I like that. That was a good version.
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. Okay, thinking way back to that first activity you guys did, would you recommend that the words be in the learner's native language and the language they learn? Would this help support them? And I think this question came in when you had teacher, mother, father, family on, in English on the screen.
Pamela, do you want to try first?
So for me, with having all the same language, we did a lot of first language connections because it did help with their growth. It all just depends on your group of students. You may find that it's too confusing with too many languages, so you need to really stick to the English. But sometimes making that first language connection really helps solidify for some students. So it's kind of getting to see and know your students, definitely, but I think it was really useful for my kiddos.
Yeah. So again, I taught a lot of Chinese students, but I had the other language backgrounds. And I tried sometimes to use Chinese, but then I would notice and I'd see the eyes of the other students, their brains would just tune out or turn off if I did that too much. So if you have primarily all Spanish speakers, yes, go for it. Put the word in their language, but better yet, have them write it down in a notebook. That's that way they make the connection. It just depends on your group. But yeah, definitely first language use, I always believe in.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is about a specific student. This participant has a seventh grade newcomer who does not read or write yet due to interrupted schooling. He works regularly with a literacy coach and is doing some one-on-one with this teacher, but has very limited oral English. So the question is, when he's in class, there's a lot of hours where he can't participate with his classmates. Do you have any recommendations for how he could work independently, during those times to continue to build those oral language skills?
Yeah. I'll be very honest. It's hard to work on oral language when you don't have someone to
Yeah.
practice with. So even 15 minutes at a time, if anyone like a para or a bilingual assistant can work with them, or a higher level student who I was always that one. I finished my work too quickly and my teacher said, go help the student that just came from another country. Right. So it's hard to work by yourself, but maybe you have flashcards for pictures and images, and maybe they do write to speak, right? That could be an idea. But I was showing frames for fluency. I'm not sure how much I should talk about it on this platform, but
You
the
can.
sentence frames, okay, the word and picture
Yeah.
cards, super easy for a pull aside for any classroom teacher to spend 5-10 minutes with that. A lot of schools will put students on a platform of some kind to practice. Still hard to practice listening and speaking through that. So, Pamela, do you have any ideas?
No, I mean, that is a really tricky one, especially if you don't have the option to have someone to pull asides. I really swore by language partners. So if there was another student that spoke their language at a higher level in class with them, I like to keep that. But I had to do a lot of training with my my other students so that they knew it wasn't a social event. It wasn't an opportunity for them to talk when the other teacher was talking, but giving them that kind of partner that they could work with throughout the day to kind of support them was always helpful.
Yeah. And it looks like we've got some good suggestions coming in through chat. So thanks everybody for chiming in there. That's great. So just a question around these activities that they seem really great for pull out small groups of English learners. But what about when you don't have an English learner teacher and can't do that pull out approach?
Yeah. So that's a lot of the time the case, right? You're not going to have a EL teacher in all of their classes. So it's really great when content teachers are trained in something to give the EL student, simply. That's why, again, frames for fluency or some kind of kit. Maybe you have some other curriculum that, teachers could just peek into, give them like 5 vocabulary words. Remember, we talked about very minimal, to just start them off, do something on this side. But I know that's a lot more work for teachers than they want to. So what I would do is maybe help the content teachers understand that in their list of vocabulary, there are maybe 2 words that if they don't know these 2 words, they won't understand the rest of the lesson. Like, let's pretend you're talking about metamorphosis and they need to understand butterfly. I'm sorry, they're not going to understand what process metamorphosis is for, right? So I'm sure we can have a whole presentation on content teachers. I taught content for EL. So But, there's little strategies that you can talk about with teachers that can give like, one or two things to the newcomer and say their name specifically so they know that information was for them and then move on. Pamela?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really it's optimal, I guess, to say that it's really important to make those connections too with the gen ed teacher material or whatever they're teaching for our kiddos too, because they're still going to have to learn it, right, over time. So it may just be in smaller chunks for them or just making smaller adaptations. You're going to find that a lot of times our adaptations we need for our L's also need for some of our lower level students. So a lot of times what teachers are already doing for your special ed students or IEP modifications or whatever could potentially be beneficial for our students, just the practices that they're already in. So building confidence in those teachers that they're kind of doing the right things already and all of that is usually helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a
Sorry,
great
one more
point,
thing to
Pamela.
add. Setting expectations for each of the levels might be helpful, and this can maybe have help from an EL person in the district. Or so, like we said, level 1 newcomers, word level, maybe they only learn 2 words from that vocabulary list, but the next level, a sentence, so they can describe the whole concept. So I used to actually teach multi-level and put the different notes for different leveled groups. That is a lot of work, but it was very helpful. So expectations.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Thank
Sorry,
you.
there's
And
any ideas for a 3 to 5 year old?
oh yeah.
Pamela, you did younger students.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
so I
not do
used
this.
a very similar idea to what we showed you, to be honest. We did tons of vocabulary, words and pictures, lots of connections to stories, very similar. If any of you are using our hands-on English program, I know a couple people mentioned that they might have been very similar to that, where we're reading a story, we're making connections to the target vocabulary. Same things that we showed are going to be beneficial for those younger kids. You might not need to go as deep into the academic content, but you can definitely do that. I saw there was another question regarding math as well for younger kids. It's the same idea. Pictures that align to the math words, different images that align to the math concepts, how much, how many, doing all of those things. You can definitely do pictures with all of the dots for numbers or different shapes, different colors, all of those different options. They work.
Right. I'm going to squeeze in one more question, though we have several more great ones, but one last one before we sign off. This participant has some newcomer students who are more confident in their writing than their speaking and is wondering if it's appropriate to have them write to speak rather than speak to write.
Yes, I love that question. I'm going to take that one first. Writing to speak is definitely in the Chinese realm of students. Definitely write to speak because that's the easier skill. They're very confident in writing and reading, actually. Listening and speaking is very difficult when they come here. I primarily worked with international students. So yes, I always loved write to speak. I would do a question, have them write it even in their own language, and then maybe in English first. And then that fluency lines activity, get them up, partner them, have them speak from that, then put away their paper behind their backs and then speak from that, and they'll practice speaking really quickly. It's almost better to start with academic speaking. Actually, I know this sounds a little backwards, but start with academic speaking for them because they're ready for that if they're already writing. Then maybe the social language can come later. Go ahead, Pamela.
No, I totally agree. For me, my kids had the basic social language. So the focus was always academic language because they could get by because they wanted to talk to their friends, and enough of their friends had basic Spanish social language. So we only did academic language, and I would have to push them into really focusing on the English and not communicating in their first language.
Well, I'm sad that our time together has ended. We had such a great time together and great questions. So thanks everybody for chiming in with those questions and for all your back and forth in the chat, helping each other. That was great. So thanks, Brenda and Pamela, for being here with us. And thanks Ballard and Ty for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to participating in another webinar soon. And again, have a great day. And thanks for all you do to support your English language learners. It's important work.